By the end of this video, you'll be able to decide for yourself whether living as an expat could be a thrilling adventure or a challenging path filled with hardships. As an expat myself, today's topic is one I'm especially passionate about. Expat life, is it an adventure or a hardship? I'll share some practical tips and personal insights that I uncovered during my own journey as an expat. After arriving in a new country, many people moving into expat life experience a series of phases as they adapt to their new environment. Each phase presents unique emotional, social, and practical challenges and insights. Some people successfully navigate both the highs and the lows of each phase, but some find out that, the challenges are more than they bargained for, and they decide that, maybe expat life just isn't for them. And that's just fine. But I want to help you determine whether you're willing to take on the struggles that are an unavoidable part of adaptation to a new country. Before we look at the phases you'll go through when you start your expat life. Hi, I'm Kate, and this is my YouTube channel, KateGypsy. I hope you watch to the very end so you can figure out whether expat life would be an adventure or a hardship for you. But if you want to get a drink or a snack, just put me on pause for a moment and then come on back. But maybe you'd be kind enough to give me a thumbs up and subscribe now. Thanks very much for that. Now let's take a look at what you could encounter in your path to becoming an expat. I'll call the first phase the honeymoon, because in the beginning, you look around at the new country you just arrived in and you feel thoroughly excited. This honeymoon phase is wonderful, and you decide that, moving to this country was the absolute right move for you. Yes, the honeymoon phase is usually utterly thrilling. Everything about the new country feels exciting, fresh, and even magical. You'll probably be captivated by the cultural differences and intrigued by new surroundings as you begin exploring local customs. You don't yet realize that there will be challenges ahead that you can't even see yet. Your new expat friends will probably predict that some challenges are coming your way, but you don't really believe them because you're thrilled by the novelty of everything. Everything that's happening in your new life is new and exciting, and even the inconveniences seem like fun quirks. The honeymoon is filled with optimism and a sense of adventure, but it doesn't last. At some point, the novelty wears off, and you begin to get annoyed at things that seemed interesting and fun just a few days earlier. The idea of expat life starts to become de-romanticized. No matter how prepared you were, the reality of day-to-day life in a foreign country starts to be overwhelming. When that happens, you're entering the second phase. It's called culture shock. Reality begins to settle in. In this phase of culture shock, the differences between your native culture and the new one start to have you questioning whether, is expat life really for me? The differences can seem more challenging than what you expected. Culture shock comes in many forms. It can range from minor things, little things like finding out your favorite foods aren't there, to larger struggles like not really understanding how to act in a social situation or a business situation. And then there's the language barrier. If you've moved somewhere with a different language, communication can become a real challenge, from simple things like ordering food to more complex tasks like setting up a bank account. On top of all this, you might find it tough to connect with others, and you start to feel isolated and lonely because you no longer have your support system of family and friends. Building new relationships takes time, and the weight of the challenge can turn into the dream of living abroad into a struggle. Now, while the challenges I've mentioned are real, they don't define the complete expat experience. It may sound strange at first, but dealing with culture shock can actually be a source of learning, adventure, and enjoyment. Living in a new country opens doors to experiences that simply aren't possible when you stay in one place, your home country. You're not just visiting a culture now. You're immersing yourself in it, learning and growing in ways you may have never imagined. This phase can be emotionally intense, but it's a normal part of adapting to a new country. So let's look back at some of the challenges. Yes, things that felt charming or different in the beginning start to feel frustrating or confusing, annoying. Language barriers, unfamiliar social norms, the differences in lifestyle, all of these can become sources of stress. You can end up feeling homesick, isolated, misunderstood, and all of this leads to frustration and anxiety. Adjusting to new systems like healthcare or public transportation can also add to the stress. Unfortunately, it's during this phase that some expat wannabes decide, this is not for me. They decide not to stick around. They're not going to wait to see if they can adapt. Instead, they accept that they just don't like the expat lifestyle, and they head back to their home country. I've known some people who went home at this point, and I'll admit that there were times when I was very tempted to do the same thing. But I knew all along that I could go back to my home country whenever I really wanted to. So staying a little longer wasn't as difficult perhaps for me. I recognized that I didn't want to return to the life I'd led in my own country, and that realization opened the door to the beginning of adjusting to the different ways of doing things that my new country offered me. So if you decide to stick it out, you'll enter the third phase. It's called adjusting. And you may actually discover a sense of freedom in this phase as you learn how to navigate life in a new way. You'll find that you build confidence and adaptability as you start to create a life that's entirely yours. You begin to find ways to cope with the differences, and you adapt to your new surroundings. You start developing routines, building a social network, and becoming more comfortable with the local customs. The initial frustrations lessen as you gain familiarity with the daily routine and even with the language. During this period, you begin to strike a balance between your original culture and the new one. You integrate elements of both into your new expat life. It's common to experience a mix of challenges and victories, but you start to feel more empowered and capable with your growth and the increasing confidence that you're getting. Basically, what's happening is that you're developing a new lifestyle that gradually feels easier. You might even wonder, well, why did things seem so difficult just a short time ago? They really weren't that difficult at all. So, recognizing that the lifestyle in your new country isn't as difficult as it had seemed weeks earlier means that you're entering the fourth phase, acceptance. Yes, you've accepted much of the new country's culture, and it starts to feel like a true home. You may not fully assimilate, but you feel comfortable and at ease with the differences around you. By now, you've built up some relationships, established some routines, and possibly even adopted some local customs into your everyday life. You might still miss certain aspects of your home culture, but you've learned to appreciate and accept many of the differences that you've found in your new home. In this phase, you begin to recognize a sense of stability, where the foreign aspects of the culture have become familiar, and more importantly, manageable. Yes. What's happening is that you are integrating and beginning to feel settled into your new lifestyle. This is the 5th phase. And yes, you may even identify with aspects of the new culture as your own. You've likely found a balance between your original culture and the new one, feeling that you belong to both. You may find that this phase is about realizing how your identity has evolved, and you've become a blend of both cultures. You may celebrate local holidays, follow cultural customs, and navigate the language more easily. Life feels natural, and most important, you no longer consider yourself an outsider. At this stage, you've integrated, and your life in the new country feels complete and fulfilling. Now, you're probably wondering, how long does it take to complete all of these phases? I wish I could give you a realistic prediction about that. The phases are not episodes that end when you move from one to another. In fact, movement back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between phases is completely normal. In other words, you don't finish one phase and then you're done with it, move on to the next one. No, these phases are not isolated from each other. It's normal to go back to previous phases when a current phase seems overwhelming. And then eventually you go back to that new one again and work on it. Not necessarily consciously, but you start processing it in your brain, in your heart. Yes, moving to another country is a big decision. And while it can be thrilling, it also comes with its own set of challenges. I hope I've given you an honest look at what it's really like, so that you can decide whether expat life might be your next big adventure. In addition, I hope this honest look at expat life brought a bit of reality to your attitude about living in another country, living overseas. Maybe now you recognize that your dream of living abroad isn't as full of rainbows as you thought. And maybe you think it sounds pretty good. Does it seem like expat life comes with hidden struggles you never expected? That's okay. It's better to see both the highs and the lows of being an expat before ending up having uprooted your life for something that might not suit you in the end. Let me share a quick story with you. A friend of mine moved to a beautiful tropical country. She expected to live the perfect island life as a digital nomad. She imagined spending her days working remotely on the beach. A lot of people do, and embracing the laid-back lifestyle. But after a few months, when the novelty wore off, she felt disconnected from her friends and family back home. She struggled to find stable Wi-Fi for her remote work, and she faced visa issues that put her in a constant state of stress. She eventually said, this isn't for me. She moved back home, realizing that expat life wasn't as glamorous or as adventurous as she had originally imagined. This is just one example of how moving abroad can sometimes fall short of the dream you had in mind. In contrast, I had another friend who tested out living in Thailand for a few years, and then she went on to another country. and then another country, and then another. In other words, she became a serial expat, living in a series of several countries for a few years each, and she loves her serial expat lifestyle. You can probably see that living abroad can introduce you to a lifestyle that's completely different from what you experienced in your home country. You'll try new foods, learn about local customs, and even pick up a new language. These are experiences that broaden your perspective and teach you about the world in a very hands-on way. Many expats explain that living abroad and navigating new situations boosts your confidence, your resilience, your adaptability. You figure out how to solve problems, communicate across language barriers, and embrace change. And these skills stick with you for the rest of your life. So yes, while expat life can be challenging, it can also be an incredible adventure, and it can be incredibly rewarding. You just have to decide whether the adventure of expat living is worth dealing with the challenges, with the struggles. I certainly found a better life as an expat, but it's not the answer for everyone. I have found living overseas gave me the adventure I wanted, as well as the personal growth, personal fulfillment that I got from learning how to adapt to a completely different lifestyle. I definitely had my struggles, but even in the midst of my difficulties, I still knew that living abroad was the adventure I wanted. Every challenge you face as an expat and overcome shapes who you are, giving you stories, memories, and a new sense of self-confidence. But beware, when you go home for a visit, you might feel like the world at home has stood still among your family, your friends. It seems like the people in your home country are wearing blinders. They don't see everything that you see. That's when you finally recognize how your perspective on life has expanded. In the end, moving abroad is a deeply personal experience and a deeply personal decision. Only you can decide if the struggles of adapting to life in a new country is one that you want to attempt. Here's what you should remember. Expat life is both an adventure and a test of adaptability. If you're prepared for both the excitement and the struggles, it can be one of the most rewarding choices you'll ever make. So if you're considering a new life overseas, take the time to research, prepare, and understand what expat life truly involves. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video helped give you some perspective on your decision. Please like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts. Are you an expat already? Let me know in the comments below. What's your experience been? Are you ready for the adventure to become an expat? Or are you hoping for an escape? Bye for now. Till next time. Bye.